Hey everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create. Today I'm going to share with you a new tutorial featuring Graphic 45 Steampunk Debutante. You're going to need a few tools. I've got a pick tool, my score tool, some writing utensils. You'll need score tape, glue, scissors, some rulers, and then lastly we're going to use some of these magnetic discs as closures inside the book. Some of you have asked what I use as my base cardstock, and here it is. This is Astro Brights. It's by a company called Neenah, N-E-E-N-H. And I get this actually at Walmart. And don't look for it in the craft section. Look for it over in the office or where they have mailing envelopes. You'll find it over there. It's a really good deal and it holds up very well. So this album is going to be based on my 8x8 mini album tutorial that's already out there. So everything is going to be built on top of that. So with that, let's get started. So here's my 8x8. As I said, everything's going to be built on the 8x8. So we're going to start with that. And this tutorial is going to focus on adding flaps and pockets and all of the interactive mechanisms for the Steampunk Debutante mini album. Okay, so we're going to start on the inside cover. The inside cover, there's going to be two pieces. There's a left flap and a pocket. So the pocket measures 9.5 by 6.5. And you're going to score a 1/2 inch on either side. So once you fold those under, it's going to be 8.5 inches wide, which is the size of the cover for the album. So the album is actually 8.5 by 8.5 on the outside. The pocket pages are 8x8. So this will be 8.5 by 6.5 once you've tucked in the sides. And then there's going to be a top flap. This is actually going to hold the envelope closed. Okay. So again, that's 9.5 by 6.5. Okay, let's get the tape off, get a little glue on, and then what I'm doing here on the inside cover, I'm also doing on the back inside cover. So they'll be the same. They'll both have two large pockets. Okay. We want to line this up with the hinge, but don't go inside the hinge because you want the book to be able to open and close freely. I'm going to turn this sideways, my usual technique, so I can see 3 out of the 4 sides when I lay it down. And again, stay out of the hinge area so the book can open and close freely. Okay, and then as I said before, exactly what we're doing here, we're going to do it on the back side cover. Okay, so now we have our nice big deep pocket. And we're going to apply a flap to the top so that when you're opening and closing the book, you don't have to worry about things falling out. Okay, and then this is just going to go right on the edge, across here. We're going to inset it just slightly so it doesn't show on the outside of the book. Okay, there we go. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add a magnet. Actually, that's pretty tight. We might have to come back and actually put a little piece on here to hold the magnet. We'll have to see. I made that a little tighter than I meant to. Either that or I'll come back and use a smaller magnet, one of the two. Okay. Let's see. Can I do it? Nope, it's too tight. So I'm gonna use a different closure. And I haven't decided what it's gonna be yet, but we'll come back to that at the end. Okay, so that is the front. Now we're gonna flip to the back and do the same thing real quick. And here's my two pieces. Again, 9.5 by 6.5. Score a 1/2 inch on either side. That'll bring it down to 8.5 by 6. I'll lay that down. Really quick. just along the bottom of the pocket, we're going to put one strip of glue, keep things from falling out. And I'm just lining up both edges and making sure I'm staying clear of the scored hinge here. Okay, there we go. And then the last piece is going to be the top of the pocket to keep everything in place. And like I said, I made this a little short, so if you want to use magnets for your closure, I would suggest, I made this 2 5/8, maybe make it 3 5/8. So it's 8 1/2, because again, the cover, the back cover, and the front cover are 1/2 inch larger than the pages, so it's 8 1/2 by 2 5/8. But if I had it to do again, I'd probably add another inch so that I can easily get that magnet in, and when I put my designer paper over, it's going to cover. So I will come up with a different closure for this, but for now we'll just leave it as is. Okay, then we're going to move on to page 1. It's funny because no matter how much planning you do, you always wish that you had done something just a little bit different as you're working with your album. And here's another example. I thought I'd already put tape on this, so I'll do that real quick. And this measures 9 1/4 by 6 1/4, 9 1/4 by 6 1/4, and then you're going to score along 3 sides, both sides and the bottom, and that's going to make a large pocket. I'm going to double check my measurements because I said 9 1/4, but that doesn't sound right. So hang on. And whatever I put in the banner will be right. So the finished should be 8 inches, and it is. So if I add an inch, it should be 9. Yeah, it should be 9, not 9 1/4. So I actually wrote 9 1/4, and I think I made it a little bit too big. And I know why now. I remember I ran out of 3/8 score tape. So I made each of my flanges a little bit bigger than I normally do because I was out of 3/8 tape. So if you're going to use 3/8 tape or glue, it really only needs to be a 1/2 inch larger on either side. So if you want a finished 8 inch, then you add a 1/2 inch for one side, a 1/2 inch for the other. That gets you to 9 inches, and it'll fit perfectly on your 8 inch page. So that's why that measurement was slightly off, but my recommended finished piece should be 9 by 6 1/4. All right, now I need my pick tool, which I have moved and can't find. So I'm going to use my poor fingernails until I find it. Okay, now this pocket, like the one on this side, is a side pocket. This one's going to be up and down. So the bottom of the pocket is going to adhere to the bottom of the first page. And I'm going to stand up to make sure, yes, I want to make sure I was still in the frame, and I was. It's hard to see when I'm sitting down. Okay, and I'm just lining the edges as usual. And if you have anything that's going to be off, you really want it to go toward the spine because your eye isn't really drawn here. It's drawn toward the edge of the paper. So I always try to make sure this side and the bottom of the page is as flush as possible. And if I've got any left over in here, I can see I've got a little. You can see it under my nail here. It's pushed toward the spine, so it's a little less obvious. Okay, and then the top of the pocket is right here, and this is 8 inches by 3 5/8. 8 inches by 3 5/8 with a 1/2 inch score. I did that right. I'm going to measure that again. I unfortunately, like I said, ran out of tape, and so I made a couple of weird, wonky measurements that don't really make sense now that I'm sitting here. Yeah, it is 3 5/8. Okay. And you, of course, you have some flexibility. All of the mats that you're going to be putting on these 2 pages are really just trimmed down to whatever size you decide to make your pocket or your flap. So it's not that critical. It's a little bit harder to mess around with measurements when you are actually applying like a piece of ephemera or something that's already predetermined in terms of its size. But these are not, so you have some flexibility. I'm going to turn this over so that I can see 3 out of the 4 sides when I apply it to the book. I'm going to set down the corner, the top corner and the sides first to make sure it's flush. Then I'm going to go across and lay it down. Second flap that we're going to put on top. So there's a top flap, and in the cut instructions, this is actually called the extended flap. Now the extended flap is actually going to get adhered right on top of here. I forgot about that. I set it aside. So I'm going to add some tape to this. And I promise you, I'm not going to make you watch me put tape down all day long. For some reason, page 1 got skipped. I think maybe it was still in the design process when I was inking and taping everything else. So go ahead and put tape along your score line. And this measures 4.5 by 5 1/15/16, which is a weird number, I know. But really what you need to do is get the ephemera card that you want to use and just trim down a piece of cardstock and leave a 1/2 inch for your hinge. So that's how I came up with those measurements. It's not ideal, I know, but if you get your ephemera card and then just add an extra 1/8 of an inch if you want a 16 inch border, or a 1/4 inch if you want an 1/8 inch border, and then and add a 1/2 inch to the side where the hinge is going to be. All right. So now it's laid down, and I did not measure it. I just eyeballed it. So it's not quite centered, but it's pretty close. So this is what it's going to look like. It'll flip up like this and then flip again for the second part. So the way I did it is I adhered the hinge right here so that when we mat this, it'll be completely covered, and there's nothing. And when we mat this, you won't see the hinge. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. And now this is where the magnet goes. It's going to go here and here. Hey everyone, it's me. I'm back. Unfortunately, I finished page 2 before I realized I was not recording. But it's a very simple page, so I'm going to go over it real quick for you. So on page 2, there's only 2 flaps. There's going to be a right and a left. The left flap is 8 by 6. You're going to score a 1/2 inch along the 6 inch side. And then you're going to adhere it to the edge of the left edge of the pocket page. So that is the first flap. The second flap is 5 3/8 by 4 1/2. 5 3/8 by 4 1/2. This is an odd measurement, and it's odd because what I did is I took a cut apart and I matted it exactly the way I wanted it and just added a 1/2 inch. So if you choose the same cut apart, it'll be the same measurements, but if you choose a different piece of ephemera, all you really need to do is mat it down and then add a 1/2 inch so that you've got your flap to adhere it to the page. So once I adhered these 2 flaps, then I added my magnet, and that is the end of page 2. Okay, page 3. I'm double checking. Yes, I'm running. The tape is running. Page 3. This looks a little bit like some of my other albums where I install what looks like 2 doors, but I'm doing something a little bit different here. So this is, again, another cut apart, and throughout this album, I feature a lot of the cut aparts mounted on flaps so that they fit exactly and get installed like that. This, I wanted to go the full length of the page, and it wasn't quite long enough, so I just trimmed down a piece of the designer paper and added it. So this piece is 8 by 4 7/8, 8 by 4 7/8, and then along the 4 7/8 side, you're going to score a 1/2 inch. And again, that measurement, the 7/8, is It's a little unusual, but it's that way because I wanted to fit this piece of ephemera, which was part of the cut aparts. It's going to go on the right-hand side of the pocket page. And then on the left-hand side of this pocket page, instead of having another door or flap feature, I'm making this a pocket. So this is 4.5 by 9. 4.5 by 9. And then you're going to score along 3 of the 4 sides to make this a pocket. Okay? One more time. 4 7/8 by 8. Score a 1/2 inch along the 4 7/8 inside. We're going to adhere that. And then this is going to be a pocket. So I'm going to go ahead and start laying that stuff down. Okay. Here's my pick tool. I'm going to lay down the flap first. And the flap is a little bit larger than half the page. So it's actually going to, when it is closed, lay on top of the pocket. Okay. So let's get this in. And I'm just looking to make it flush with 3 out of the 4 sides, as usual. And then I'm going to open it so that I can put the pocket in. The pocket is going to operate this way. So the bottom of the pocket is going toward the spine. So earlier I was talking, blabbing away, just entertaining myself. Can't find the edge of the tape. Here it is. And was sharing that we had just finished our retreat in San Clemente. It was a ton of fun. Ginger Rop came in and taught 2 classes. And of course that was, you know, wildly popular. Everybody just adores her. And I did some make and takes there that were pretty popular too. And as a matter of fact, what I think I'm going to do is a couple of small videos to cover those. So normally my videos are rather lengthy and they're mini albums, but there was a couple of cards that I made and people really liked them. And I've actually showcased them at the end of some of my mini album tutorials. But I don't show you how to make them. I just show you what I do with the scraps. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put a couple of those, you know, short features together so you guys can see what we did at the retreat. And then also you'll know how to make some of them. They're pretty basic cards, but I have gotten a couple of requests. So after I finish this mini album, I think I'm going to go ahead and put a couple of those out. So here we go. So I'm adhering this pocket to the inside of the pocket page. The bottom of the pocket feature is actually toward the spine. Here we go. So if you take a look at it, the pocket is open toward the middle of the page. This flap goes on top and it will keep whatever's in the pocket stationary. So what's going in these pocket are these 2 inserts, which I've pre-cut, and I'm going to go ahead and just leave them in here. And these are 6 3/4 by 3 7/8. 6 3/4 by 3 7/8. There's going to be 2 of them, and they're just going to go into the pocket side by side. And then this flap is going to close. Now these 2 pieces are very close, so it's too tight for me to put a magnet here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adhere my magnet to this flap and actually to the base of the page, not to the pocket, because there's not enough overlap to work with. And I knew that when I designed it, and I was okay with that because I'll just put the magnet down here. Actually, I need to make sure it's far enough away from the mat. So now I just need to get sticky on the other side and lay this down, and you'll see what I mean once the second magnet is placed. But I actually didn't want more of an overlap because I wanted this flap to actually be the same size as the ephemera. So when you do that, it's slightly on top of the pocket. So I'm just gonna lift the pocket, make sure, yeah, there we go. So it's gonna be right here, and that'll be fine. And when I put a mat here, it's gonna go slightly underneath this pocket. So you won't see that at all. And that's going to hold it shut. And then we're going to have these 2 inserts nestled in here side by side. And I haven't decided how I'm going to decorate these, but I think they'll look something like tags. That is the end of page 3. So we're moving right along. Okay. So page 2, page 3, now we're on to page 4. Page 4. And so I mentioned this earlier, but I'll mention it again. I used the cut-aparts in this collection extensively. The DCEs don't come with their own separate set of ephemera cards, but they do come with cut-apart sheets, and that's where these came from. And the cut-aparts tend to be more custom-sized, so that's why I've already matted these, rather than try to figure out the measurements ahead of time. It's easy with ephemera cards because they're 2 standard sizes, 4x6 and 3x5, I think is what it is, and they're all the same size. These are all a little bit different. So what I did was I hand-picked the cut-aparts that I wanted to use in the book, and I went ahead and matted them, and then just added a 1/2 inch for the hinge. And so this page, I'm actually going to do essentially the same thing I did here, where I'm using the sort of cut-apart piece to hold the flap down. I'm going to do the same thing here, just with a different cut-apart. Visually, it'll look quite different, but structurally, it's essentially the same design. Okay, and I don't know what it is. I've looked at these flaps. I'm kicking myself right now. I've looked at this package, I don't know, for a month. I've been trying to put this thing together, and then I've had to stop and start so many times. I can't believe I don't have the tape down, so I really apologize that this is going slow because I had not worked ahead of time to get my tape down. I thought these pages had tape. It turns out some do and some don't. So, all right, I'm just looking toward the top, squaring things off, and I'm laying down my first flap. There we go. Okay, and then this is a nice little flap, and it's just enough of an overlay to hold this flap in place. Oh, look, tape. So I guess, oh, I know why I did it. I ran out of tape. That's what it was. I ran out of tape. I know, it's a crime. I'm telling you. It's really hard to put an album together when you run out of supplies halfway through. So this can go anywhere visually that you like. I think I'm going to go a little low, a little off center. What I find putting albums together is you either have to be dead on center or don't try at all. Just offset it completely. And for me, offsetting works because visually I can tell if something is not centered immediately, and it'll drive me to distraction. So rather than fight it, I just go off center purposely. And that works for me. It's not for everybody. Some people want to get out their rulers and they want to mark that little tag and make it perfectly centered, but it's not for everybody. All right, well, I just went through the rest of my magnets, so now I'm opening another set of magnets. Let me double check. They tend to run off and get stuck to a tool somewhere. Here they are. All right. So let's see if I can't get this laid down quickly. Ouch. They're so strong. They stick to everything. I don't know what's the matter with me. I'm using my fingernails. I know that's not a good thing. They're not quite thin enough to get under the tape. So all right, so I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to run a piece of tape over that and find where it goes. Oh, I also wanted to mention, lots of you that have been watching have discovered Christine Riley, who has been helping us with her tutorials, and she's just so popular. So if you haven't seen one of her tutorials, it's on this channel. Be sure to check her out. She's got a very nice style. We're a little bit different, which is always good, right? Because you get tired of the same thing over and over. anyways, she's just a real doll and has been very helpful to us, and we appreciate her. So I just wanted to give Christine a quick shout out. And like I said, if you haven't seen some of her videos, it is here on Scrap and Create. Look for her videos. One of them is her most recent one, I think, is Flutter, and then she's also got one out for Ladies Diary, and there are tutorials coming for Flutter, and there's already tutorials out for Ladies Diary. And by all means, be sure to comment and let her know how much you appreciate her. We sure do. And as long as I think we're appreciating her, she's going to continue to give us some inspiration, and I really appreciate that. Okay, so we're done with this page. So we're moving right along. Page 1. I'm going to have to trim that down. Page 1, page 2, 3, page 4. Okay, so page 5. We're on to page 5. We finished page 4. Page 5 is going to actually remain blank. We are going to mat this, and then we're going to have a special mechanism that actually lays on top of the mat. So we're not going to adhere any flaps to this. The interactive piece that we add to this page is actually going to lay directly on top of the mat. So we're going to go to page 6. Page 6 is simple. Single flap. It's going to be adhered to the left-hand side. Add that real quick. And it's going to be held closed with magnets. So we'll get those placed real quick. And then we're gonna spend a little bit of time on page 7, because page 7 is a waterfall page, and they always take a little bit of time. Okay, there's page 6, just a simple flap on the left-hand side. And then page, oh, we're gonna put the, sorry, I was gonna skip right on and forget the magnets. We're gonna put 2 magnets in. Here we go. All right, so I'm going to put this one down first because I want to make sure I have enough space around the edge so that when it's matted, I don't have to worry about exposing any of the magnet. Okay, that's that. Put a little stick on here, which is stuck to me. And you guys might notice I'm using kind of large magnets. Normally I use the smaller ones. These just happen to be open, so that's what I'm using. It's not necessarily a preference, but they are strong. They're very strong. And they can go through many layers of paper. It looks like I got a little piece of tape hanging out here that I need to take care of. Well, I'm going to fuss with that a little bit later, but I think I got most of it. Okay, so that's page 6. Page 7. That's page 8. Page 7. Again, cut apart, and like I said, these are all kind of unique sizes. So I trimmed this down to fit and added a 1/2 inch for the flap. This is going to be the mechanism that holds the waterfall in place. So my waterfall is going to cascade from the top down, and then this is going to hold the whole kit and caboodle in place. So originally when I designed this, I was thinking I would line my waterfall up centered all the way down, but I'm rethinking that now. I think I want to do a stagger so that you see, that's not quite tight enough. You see quickly that there's multiple papers, and can kind of see that. Let me find something for contrast. You can see a cascaded edge this way, and then she's going to come from the bottom up and hold everything in place. Okay, so what I'm going to do to get this effect is I'm going to determine the placement of my first flap, which I think I want to put as close to the spine as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Oh, actually, I take that back. We're going to set this aside because now that you know what we're doing here, you know that we need to put the mat down first. And then we put the papers down. So she can actually be adhered now because a mat will go on top of her hinge, but these hinges are going to sit on top of the base page. So I'm going to, I know that the last flap is going to be lined with the edge of the page, and I want her kind of centered on that. So this is where I'm going to put her. So I'm just eyeballing it. I took one of my, I'm going to use this cardstock so you can see what I'm talking about. One of my photo mats, it's going to be lined with the edge of the pocket page. So I want this piece of ephemera to be somewhat centered on the final photo mat, not on the whole construction, but on the final photo mat. And this looks about right. So I'm going to put it right here. And I've already got a magnet on this, and I'll add a magnet to the last piece when I come back and put these in. And I want her lined to the bottom of the page so the mat will cover her hinge. I'm struggling because my light, I'm in my own light. So I'm going to do this. I'll put it so sticky. It's sticking to me. That's about centered. Okay. In this case, I'm not really that worried about being perfectly centered. I actually am more worried about this being flush on the edge. And it is now. So this is what it's going to look like. Okay. So we'll come back to page 7 and add our waterfall pieces after we've added the mat. Okay. And that is the same thing for page 5. Once we add the mat, we'll come back and add the mechanisms. And then here's page 8. Page 8, we're going to have 2 flaps. They open left and right. And then inside is a small pocket that's going to go on the bottom. So we're going to add the flaps first and then add the pocket at the bottom. And I was just looking at this, and I think I made these to overlap. And they do slightly. And I'm rethinking that. I think I'm going to trim these down. I think I'm going to trim these down so that they... Oh, no, I won't. No, I won't. I'm going to leave them this size, and then I'm going to put magnets on both of them to hold them in place. So this is 4 3/4 by 8. 4 3/4 by 8. Okay, one on the left, one on the right, and then the pocket's going to go in the middle. And then that is going to be it for the mechanisms for this album. Everything else is going to get done with a designer layer because we have to add the mats first. So I'm going to wrap things up here quickly. And then walk you through real quick what we did one more time, and then there'll be another video following with additional details, adding all the designer paper. Okay, I'm going to start with one side. Okay, and I'm staying clear of the actual spine itself, and I don't know what my problem is, but there's more tape again. I'll have to be careful to get that folded in before I lay it down. Okay. And then the left flap. And then we have this little pocket that goes down here. And first I'm going to dry fit it to make sure, and I can't. I was going to say to make sure I can close both the flaps, and I can't. So I need to trim this down just a tiny bit. It's impossible to know exactly what the fit is when you have score lines, because you never know exactly how much space that score line is going to take up. It looks like I need to go even just a smidge more. Okay. And this is just a simple pocket. I am gonna run glue on it. I did not add flanges. You can, and by adding a 1/2 inch or an inch to the width and a 1/2 inch to the length. But I'm just gonna make this a simple pocket that lays directly on the pocket page. And I want as much space on the inside as possible. That's why I'm using a thin glue line instead of a 1/2 inch of score tape. Also, if you've noticed, when you're putting mini albums together, sometimes when you have tape at the bottom of your pocket and you put something in it, it can sometimes push the tape around and actually get stuck on the tape. That won't happen with glue on the bottom. So even if you like score tape, keep score tape to the side, glue to the bottom, and you won't have to worry about your insert getting hung up. That is the end of page 8. I'm going to put the cap on my glue, and then we're going to go back to the front, and we're going to walk through the whole thing. Okay. So here we go. So here's the inside. And as you recall, I made this flap a little shallow, which means it's going to be hard for me to get a magnet. So I've got to come up with some design feature to help close this. So this is a flap with a pocket. And when we come back to do the designer layers, I will have some solution for this. This is exactly the same in the front as it is in the back. Okay. Now this one I wanted to be kind of a wide pocket. So I did add my 1/2 inch flanges to both sides, and then did a glue line on the bottom so I can get more stuff in here. Okay, page 1, I've got an ephemera that's gonna flip up, and then this whole thing flips again, and then there's a pocket here. And that's gonna close. And this is, of course, a pocket page. The whole album is based on pocket page. There's no inserts in right now. When I come back to do the designer layers, that's when we'll talk about those. Page 1, a simple right flap and left flap adhered with a magnet. Page 2, we've got a right flap and then a pocket, and inside the pocket are going to be 2 tags, which I pre-cut and stuck in here so I don't forget. Okay, page 3, we've got a left flap and a right flap adhered with a magnet. This is blank because the feature is actually going to lay on top of the mat. Page 6, we have a left flap adhered with a magnet. This is going to be the waterfall page. Page 7, this is going to be the piece that holds the waterfall in place. The waterfall will actually be adhered to the designer paper that gets matted here. So for now, that's it on page 7. And page 8, we've got my doors. I've got to get them in every album, so here they are. And then a simple pocket along the bottom. And then, like I said before, the back is the same as the front liner. So that is it. We have a total of 10 interactive pages in this book. When I come back with my second video featuring this collection, it'll be adding all the designer layers. So I look forward to putting that together for you guys. Please comment, like, share, and if you haven't already, be sure to watch some of Christine's videos and add some comments. Let her know how she's doing. And thanks for tuning in. I'll be back soon with the second half of this tutorial. Thanks. Bye, everyone.